The rain came down in sheets, hammering the tin roof of the old gas station where Tom sat, his hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug. It was late, past midnight, and the world outside was a blur of water and wind, the kind of storm that made the small town of Willow Creek, Ohio, feel like it was holding its breath. Tom's eyes, heavy with exhaustion, stared at the flickering neon sign outside. Open 24 hours. He wasn't sure why he was still here long after his shift at the station ended. Maybe it was the quiet, the way it let him think about his daughter, Lily, asleep at home with her grandmother, her small face probably still streaked with tears. How do you tell a 7-year-old her mom isn't coming back? How do you explain a car accident that stole half your heart and left you to pick up the pieces alone? Tom's fingers tightened around the mug, the warmth grounding him as the storm raged. He was 38, but the lines on his face made him look older, carved by months of grief and the weight of raising Lily on a gas station clerk's paycheck. The bell above the door jingled, but no one came in just the wind, rattling the glass. He sighed, setting the mug down, when a deafening crack split the air, like the sky itself had shattered. His head snapped up. Through the rain-streaked window, he saw a flash of fire in the distance, a glow flickering against the black woods beyond the highway. His heart lurched. That wasn't lightning. Something had crashed. He grabbed his coat, the worn denim one Lily always hugged when he came home, and ran into the storm. The rain stung his face, cold and sharp, as he sprinted toward the light. His boots sank into the mud, the wind howling in his ears, but he kept moving, driven by something he couldn't name. The glow grew brighter, and there, in a clearing just off the road, was a small plane. Its nose buried in the earth, one wing crumpled like a broken bird. Smoke curled from the wreckage, and Tom's stomach twisted. Was anyone alive in there? He reached the plane, his breath ragged, and yanked at the warped door. It wouldn't budge. "Hey, can you hear me?" he shouted, his voice nearly lost in the storm. A faint groan answered him. He grabbed a rock, smashing it against the door's hinge until it gave way. Inside, slumped over the controls, was a woman, her face pale, blood trickling from a gash on her forehead. Her flight jacket was torn, her hands trembling as she tried to unbuckle her harness. "Hold on," Tom said, his voice steady despite the panic in his chest. "I've got you." Her name was Claire, she mumbled, her voice weak but clear. She was a cargo pilot, flying medical supplies to a hospital in Cleveland when the storm hit. The engine had failed, and she tried to land in the field, but the wind was too strong. Tom worked quickly, his hands shaking as he unbuckled her and pulled her free, her body light but limp against his shoulder. The rain soaked them both as he carried her away from the wreckage, just as a spark flared behind them. He didn't look back, not until they were safe under the gas station's awning, Claire shivering in his arms. Inside, he set her on a stool by the counter, grabbing a first aid kit from behind the register. "You're okay," he said, more to himself than to her, as he cleaned the cut on her forehead with a gauze pad. Her eyes, a sharp green even in the dim light, followed his movements. "Why'd you come out there?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "You could have died." Tom paused, the gauze hovering over her skin. He thought of Lily, of the way she'd cling to him after nightmares, her small hands gripping his shirt. "Couldn't just leave you," he said simply, his voice low. "Not how I'm wired." Claire's lips twitched, almost a smile, but pain flickered across her face. She was in her late 40s, Tom guessed, with short, gray-streaked hair and a toughness in her posture even now. She wasn't from around here. Her accent had a trace of the South, maybe Georgia, but she carried the same kind of weariness Tom knew too well, the kind that came from fighting battles no one else saw. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, one he kept in the back for late nights, and poured her a cup of coffee. "It's not much," he said, sliding the mug toward her, "but it's hot." She took it, her hands steadying as she held it close, the steam rising between them. "You didn't have to do this," she said, her voice softer now. "Most people would have called 911 and stayed dry." Tom shrugged, leaning against the counter. "Phones are down. Storms got the lines all messed up. Besides, you needed help." "That's enough for me." Claire looked at him, really looked, and for a moment, the storm outside seemed to fade, leaving just the hum of the fluorescent lights and the warmth of the coffee between them. They talked as the rain pounded the roof, the kind of talk that happens when two strangers are thrown together by fate. Claire told him about flying, how she'd been a pilot for 20 years, hauling cargo across the Midwest, never staying in one place long. She liked the sky, she said, because it was honest, no secrets, just you and the wind. Tom nodded, understanding more than he expected. He told her about Lily, how she loved drawing butterflies and asked every night if her mom was watching from heaven. His voice cracked when he said it, and Claire's hand reached out, just a brush against his arm, but it was enough to make him pause, to take a breath. "You're a good dad," she said quietly, her eyes steady on his. "She's lucky to have you." Tom looked away, his throat tight. He wanted to believe her, but the doubts were always there, whispering that he wasn't enough, that he couldn't give Lily the life she deserved. He didn't say it, but Claire seemed to sense it, her silence gentle, not pressing. She sipped her coffee, and he noticed her hands calloused, steady, the hands of someone who'd held tight to life through storms of her own. The hours passed, the storm easing into a soft drizzle. Claire's strength returned, but Tom could tell she was still shaken, her eyes darting to the window as if expecting the sky to split open again. He offered to drive her to the hospital once the roads cleared, but she shook her head. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice wavered. "Just need to get my bearings." Tom didn't push. Instead, he pulled out a pack of cards from under the counter, the ones he played solitaire with on slow nights. "You up for a game?" he asked, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Keeps the nerves steady." Claire laughed, a low, warm sound that surprised them both. "You're on," she said, and they played gin rummy, the cards slapping softly on the counter, their laughter filling the empty station. It was simple, but it felt like more a moment of connection. Two people finding a thread of light in the dark. She told him about her daughter, grown now, living in Atlanta. "Haven't seen her in years," Claire admitted, her voice heavy. She didn't want a mom who was always gone. Tom nodded, understanding the ache of distance, the way love could hurt, even when it was still there. Morning broke, the sky clearing to a pale gray. Claire's radio crackled to life, patched through to emergency services, and a tow truck was on its way for the wreckage. "She'd be fine," the medics said when they arrived, "just a concussion and some bruises." But before she left, she reached into her flight bag, pulling out a small silver pin shaped like a pair of wings. "For Lily," she said, pressing it into Tom's hand. "Tell her it's from a pilot who knows how to fly through storms." Tom's fingers closed around it, his chest tight. "I will," he promised, his voice barely above a whisper. Claire left with the medics, and Tom went home, the pin tucked safely in his pocket. Lily was awake, her crayons scattered across the kitchen table, a half-finished butterfly glowing in bright blues and yellows. "Daddy?" she cried, running to him, her arms wrapping around his waist. He knelt down, pulling her close, the scent of her strawberry shampoo grounding him. "Got something for you," he said, opening his hand to reveal the pin. Her eyes widened, bright and curious, as he told her about Claire, about the plane and the storm and the woman who flew like a hero. Lily pinned it to her sweater, her smile brighter than he'd seen in months. But the story didn't end there. A week later, a letter arrived at the gas station, addressed to Tom in neat, slanted handwriting. Inside was a check enough to cover Lily's school supplies for the year, maybe more. There was a note, too, from Claire. "You saved my life, Tom. This is for Lily. Tell her to keep drawing those butterflies. They're her wings." Tom stood there, the paper trembling in his hands, tears blurring the words. He hadn't told Claire about the bills piling up, the way he'd been skipping meals to make sure Lily had enough. But somehow, she'd known. Somehow, she'd seen the weight he carried and offered a small, quiet kindness that felt like a lifeline. That night, he sat with Lily at the table, helping her color a new butterfly, its wings shimmering with every shade she could find. He thought of Claire, of the storm, of the way a single night had woven their lives together. He realized then that kindness wasn't just a moment, it was a chain, linking one heart to another, spreading hope like ripples on a lake. He tucked Lily into bed, the silver pin gleaming on her nightstand, and whispered, "You're my hero, kid." She smiled, already half asleep, and Tom felt something shift inside him, a lightness he hadn't known in months. One small act can change a life. A cup of coffee, a game of cards, a pair of wings. They're not just things. They're bridges built from the heart, strong enough to carry someone through the darkest storms. Have you seen kindness change a life? Share your story in the comments.